Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hotsport. We have got a loaded video, a very emotional video for me, as this will be the last time I will be doing Anton's Tears on Hotsport. We'll be getting into all of that right after this. Let's go. It's time for Anton's Tears. Until the intro plays. Here we go. Well, hello everybody, and again, it's time for Anton's Tears. Make sure you're hitting the like button. Make sure you are subscribing. We're going to talk a little bit about this at the beginning and about the end. I don't have my regular spiel because, look, this is actually not sad. It's actually very, very exciting. So, as you can see, I've been promoting Fire Them Cannons all year. That podcast that I do with Cal. Now, that podcast is now shifting to become the main channel. We are looking to create just a juggernaut in football YouTube, really. And we're putting all of our eggs in that basket. We're doing really well in terms of our live streams and in terms of the algorithm pushing that particular channel. So what we've done is, instead of making it just a podcast, basically we've combined Calgona TV and Hotsport into one network, which would now be called Fire Them Cannons. So all of my videos, this one, Under Pressure, and Upset Alert, which will not be featuring this week just because it's 9 p.m. the time of recording, and the game is now in 4 hours and 15 minutes. But yeah, that is our big announcement. Now, Hotsport, we will still be posting all the videos on Hotsport. I'll be looking to do different types of content on Hotsport when I can. But so keep staying locked on. But if you wish to keep continuing watching this awesome content, by the way, Cal is going to be starting to make similar shows to this with amazing graphics and you know, a bit of humor as well and stuff. We're going to be pumping out content every single day on all different versions, shorts, podcasts, lives, these shows, regular videos, you name it. So we're going to keep everybody plugged in and entertained all year round, hopefully for many years to come as that channel grows. But keep showing the love to Hotsport. We will still be collaborating the videos on Hotsport, so they will still be being posted all the time. But I thought I would start out this video with that big announcement, so you hear it at the start of the video when I got your attention, rather than the end of the video when I have the least likely to get your attention. Bit cheeky. So, but without further ado, guys, and yes, you did think I would run away from doing it, considering what happened to Arsenal last weekend, but that's not me. It's time now to do Anton's Tears, and of course, every single week, as always, since their elimination in December, Wolves are the elimination tier. So let's move on. Still fighting. This is the bottom tier, obviously. And look, I think the reason why it's the bottom tier is because it's quite obvious that these three are the most likely candidates to go down besides Wolves. So obviously two of these three teams more than likely will go down. Let's just give you an update kind of on that relegation fight. Currently, you know, Wolves again on their grand total of 8 are at the bottom. Burnley are 7 points above them, but still 10 points in the relegation zone at 15. So Burnley at the moment are definitely on elimination warning, I would tell you that. So like there's a high likelihood that Burnley should join Wolves on that elimination tier. And then West Ham on 25 points shy of Nottingham Forest. Now, all of Nottingham Forest, West Ham, and Burnley picked up pretty impressive results last weekend again. So, like, as much as these teams are at the bottom parts of the tiers, actually, I think this is probably their best form that any of those teams have shown this season. We've mentioned about, you know, Forest and their points against Arsenal last week. They went ahead. They went to Brentford, an away ground that a lot of people struggled in, and they came away with a 2-0 victory. They've been showing a lot of ambition in the transfer window as well. They've been going after Jean-Philippe Mateta. We'll talk about that when we get to Crystal Palace. But, you know, they make a push from him. A lot of people think that he'll probably end up at AC Milan. But again, Forest trying their best to kind of stay and do what they need to stay in this league. And same with Burnley. By the way, Burnley got a draw at home against Tottenham. So it's another impressive point from Burnley. Yeah, I know these aren't victories and that's what they need to stay up, but in all intents and purposes, beating Liverpool and Spurs in back-to-back, drawing with Liverpool and Spurs in back-to-back weeks, and Man United the week before that. Oh God, I'm just keeping going back where Burnley have been consistent. Yeah, so 3 draws in a row, all against Big Six opposition. So again, they're still clawing and fighting. I think they would really love to have a win, but I don't think that's what you can really expect in those type of fixtures. Those wins are going to be expected in games that, you know, the opponents aren't as good. Like Sunderland away. Again, that's another tough one away from home. Let's see. But West Ham, they beat Sunderland at home. But I've got questions about West Ham off of the pitch now, which is kind of why, even though for me they have a win, it feels a little bit dark on the West Ham side right now. Paqueta's now gone back to Brazil. He's got transferred to Flamengo. Very odd, by the way, that they would transfer James Ward-Prowse to Burnley, a fellow relegation fighter. So this is kind of teams in and around where they are. It doesn't really help by strengthening a relegation team. They brought in Adama Traore a week ago. But, you know, they've sent out a lot of players as well on loan. Young players that could have kind of filled out that depth. Luis Guilherme has also gone. They sold him, I believe, to Sporting Lisbon as well. So like a lot of tanking, which is just a weird term for a Premier League team because, you know, tanking sends you to the Championship. But weird overhaul in West Ham squad. Now we were thinking that it was like Nuno that was going to go out. Maybe they've gone with a different avenue. Maybe the players are just not good enough. I know Paqueta just wanted to leave, so that's a whole other story. But, yeah, doesn't really fill you with a lot of excitement, I guess, or hope, if you were a West Ham team fan. But, yeah, that's kind of what it is. But yeah, they keep fighting. Another tough weekend for all 3, I believe. West Ham have to go to Stamford Bridge. Nottingham Forest host Crystal Palace, so that's going to be an interesting one. One to look out for if you're a Forest fan, especially being at home. And Burnley go to fellow promotion team Sunderland, who obviously have done a lot better in the league this year. But West Ham, you know, beat Sunderland at home last weekend, so we will see. Next tier up, crashing down to earth. Now, like their London rivals, Crystal Palace is another team that, for me, just feels like it's falling apart. You know, they lost Eze at the start of the year. They've lost Gahey recently. It looks like they're about to lose Mateta. So those are like their big 3, right? They have brought in some reinforcements. They've brought in Gerson from Aston Villa. They've also got Brandon Johnson in earlier, and he made an instant impact, but his performances haven't been the same as of late. But again, it feels like Glasner also, by the way, is leaving at the end of the year. So it just feels like a deflation of the balloon. A team that was once early on the season and second in the Prem are now, just for me, really struggling. Right now, they are on 15. They're 15th in the league on 28 points. So I still think they're going to be staying up in the Premier League this year. They're going to need to have a reset in the summer, but for the players to be wanting to leaving in January, it's a bit of a kick in the teeth, to be honest, if you're a Crystal Palace fan. For Leeds, again, they had a really good run recently of performances. It looked like they were going to go ahead and win it away from home at Everton. The Kill Dickinson Stadium was not to be, so again, a disappointing moment for them. And again, they're going to have the title favorites, the top team at the top of the league, Arsenal, heading to Ellen Road in about 4 hours, so it's going to be interesting to see where they are. But Sunderland and Crystal Palace was really what this title was about. Sunderland were doing just tremendously, and I think they're still 11th on the table. But, you know, if you look at some of their recent results, I mean, again, yes, they get the one against Crystal Palace. They destroyed against Brentford. Their last 2 trips to London, let's just say, they've lost to West Ham away, which, by the way, everyone beats West Ham at West Ham's ground. They lost to Brentford. They drew with Spurs, which was a good run, and then the one before that, it was, I believe, was it the Man City game? Okay, but the last 2 trips to London, I just think that losing to West Ham away, the way that game unfolded, was a little bit more like the Sunderland you'd expect to see. And I think for me, as the season progresses, though, we start getting into the run-in, and teams are going to bring you 100%, because especially at the ones at the bottom and the ones at the top, the games are going to be a lot harder. There's going to be a lot more intent as we head towards bottom. Again, it depends on the opponent, because there's some, like, I believe, like Liverpool, who maybe put more eggs in the European basket. That might be a slightly easier, but, we will have to wait and see. Anyway, next up, under the radar. I gotta say, these 3 teams aren't the teams that when I'm looking at the start of the fixture list, I'm like, ooh, when is Brighton and Everton and Fulham playing? But, they have, hey, by the way, Louis Barry has been on a tear, in terms of in front of goal. Tiarno Barry, yeah? Harry Wilson has been on a tear. By the way, Fulham just brought in Oscar Bob from Manchester City. And Brighton, again, they lost to Fulham last week in the head-to-head, and then they had a draw at home against Bournemouth, and before that, they had a draw away at City. While some of these are pretty good results, some of them are pretty damn disappointing. But again, I think overall, this is a good, solid team that kind of gives you what Brighton gives you every single year. But again, I'm not looking out for them all the time in the fixture, and neither really am I the other two. So it's kind of like under the radar teams. They're decent. They've had decent seasons. If you look at the points totals, I believe they're all 30 plus so far. At this point, Brighton, Everton, and Fulham's in 7th on 34 points. So they're all have pretty decent seasons, team seasons that are comfortable mid-table type of seasons for these 3 teams. Next up, underachieving. Yeah, look, when you looked at the rankings that I had of these 2 teams going into the start of the season, or even now, let's not even talk about now. I'll forget about the start of the season. If in terms of just ranking the squads, and of course they've been switching around because of transfers, I have Tottenham as 5th and Newcastle as 6th in terms of squad strength. Now, they've both had their injury issues this season. I believe they're actually 1 and 2 in terms of time with players missing this year. Number 3 actually is Arsenal. But yeah, they are not, at this point, almost 23 games in the season, we're heading to Matchweek 24, are well below par of where they want to be. And look who they have coming up for both of these teams. This is a massive week for both these teams. I'm going to make a rallying call, all right, because I don't have under pressure this week. Everything, by the way, is going to be very nicely scheduled on the new channel on Fire Them Cannons. But Liverpool away for Newcastle, and Spurs host Manchester City. Come on, give me something, both of these teams. I want to see something, especially from my rivals. Oh my God, I can't do the shameless thing this week with Tottenham. that's a little bit too far for me. But let's kind of see what they are. You need to pick up the gears. Now I know, especially with Spurs, that you are well beaten up injury-wise. But I saw you both play in the Champions League. right? Now, I know that Newcastle didn't win, but they got incredibly unlucky with the way that the refereeing was going on in that PSG game. I think they actually deserved the win against PSG on the basis of the play. And Tottenham got themselves top 4 in the Champions League. So do not tell me that Spurs are not capable of doing better in the league. All right? There's going to be a little bit of a break, especially for Spurs, because they're going to miss the next round. Not much for Newcastle because they get the bye. Time to put your chips in the Prem and start performing, because right now, Tottenham Hotspur are sitting in 14th place on 28 points. I was talking about some of those other teams who are in the 30-point bracket. Tottenham is below them, and the only reason why I have above them on the tiers is because they are a much better team. They just are a much better team. They're a much more talented team, and I know that they're more capable of, more often than not, collecting the results that they need. That's the expectation of teams like Tottenham Hotspur. Now, they are only 5 points behind a team like Newcastle, which is why I kind of see him in that way. I had them ranked as just one spot ahead in the squad rankings. But again, this is a big one. This is a team, by the way, they've had good success against overall in Man City coming to their house. And Thomas Frank, his job is on the line. So let's see what goes on. But yeah, definitely the definition, both of these, of underachieving. The next one, change of direction. And what I mean by that, it's not like change of direction in terms of like managers or planning or any of the way the club is moving. I know people could take that out of context. Change of direction in terms of form. So, and it's been happening sporadically throughout the season, by the way, for both of these two teams. Bournemouth early in the season were the Brentford of the league. Brentford started a bit lower, worked their way up really, really high, but in recent weeks, again, the loss to Forest for me was a bit of a damning one. And of course, losing to Chelsea at the Bridge, the form that was so unbelievably amazing from the Bees has kind of dropped off a little bit. While Bournemouth, Semenyo or no Semenyo, the last game with Semenyo, they beat Spurs last second at home. Now they beat Liverpool last second at home. And, in the middle, they got a good draw away at Brighton. The Cherries are revving it up. They were dropping all the way down. And look where they are on the tiers, just below the big boys. So gotta big up Bournemouth, given as well, by the way, how tough their schedule has been. Just for context, they've had the second hardest schedule so far this season, which means that they have the second easiest schedule from now on in. So the schedules should open up and really, work in their favor. Who do they have this weekend? Bournemouth. Go to Wolves. There you go. Example A. So that's kind of where I see it at. Brentford's got a tough one. They got to go to Villa Park. So again, I'm seeing these two teams kind of switch places a little bit. Brentford coming a little bit down to earth, and Bournemouth kind of going back to where they were earlier in the season. It's interesting. Everyone called me out for saying that Semenyo thing is going to be an issue. And that is when, those rumors started circling about Semenyo, is when they started having drops in form and they went for ages without victory. The minute Semenyo's gone, again, maybe they kind of knew there was a here we go. Semenyo scores for them. All right, very good, nice. That lifted off the shoulders. And then, picked up four really good points. Brighton away and Liverpool at home, and now they got Wolves on the horizon. So it's been a mass pickup on form. Areola, again, is a tremendous coach. And unlike Glasner, who I've bigged up all year, though, he hasn't complained and thrown his toys at the Prem. He understands the project, and therefore he just kind of gets the guys back on the grind as Bournemouth keep on kicking on. Next up, this is getting embarrassing for Liverpool. We're just talking about Bournemouth, but on the flip side of that, Liverpool Football Club. I just feel like overall this season, for a team that was the favorite at the start of the year, that they are making dropping points a scary habit. Do you want to hear a scary stat? for Liverpool, the favourites from the start of the season. I like to premise by saying that. This is obviously very basic analysis. But 23 games, 10 victories, and 6 draws and 7 defeats. 7 defeats! 13 times out of 23 games they've dropped points, which is more. Their winning percentage is below 500. For a team that was supposed to be the overwhelming favorite at the start of the year. You know, everybody was buying into the hype. The defending champions. And it's just, you thought they would fix up at some point, and they just never have. They just never have. Of course, when they play Arsenal twice. But, you know, beyond that, it's just getting ridiculous. Again, this is going to be a very intriguing game. It's going to be at 7 a.m. while my podcast. As always, you know, Liverpool against Newcastle, because both of those teams, for me, really, really need that game. And here's the crazy stat. If Newcastle were to go to, you know, I was just saying underachieving. If Newcastle were going to go to Anfield and win, they would both be on the same amount of points. Awkward conversation for Liverpool, who are, by the way, I don't even need to call them underachieving because that's obvious. So, again, slots under pressure. They made it to the top 8 in the Champions League. I feel like that's going to be their main priority. It feels a little bit like Arsenal like last year, but Arsenal were better than Liverpool. Let's be honest. Next up. Yeah, UCL qualification faves. I said, trying to be act a little bit younger in my vocabulary here. Aston Villa, Chelsea, and United. And Villa, let's call, is what it is. I'm going to do this every single week. They're not in the title race. I know they're 4 points off of Arsenal, but the title race is between Arsenal and then Manchester City. It's Arsenal. Well, we'll get to that point next. We're going to elaborate on that one next. But I want to switch to the third team on this tier. By the way, I should just clarify, it doesn't go from left to right in order. They're all in the same tier. But what Man United have done in the last 2 weeks and against my club must be recognized and must be celebrated. I have kind of alluded to the fact throughout the whole year that I kind of felt that Man United's team was more talented than people gave them credit for. They had a better shot of winning games than Man United fans gave them credit for. There was a point where, you know, they actually weren't playing that poorly, and yet there was still a doubt in going into every single week. And yeah, there were a lot of frustrating results under Amorim. But I find it since that Michael Carrick has taken over, and they've been playing in the right positions, that all of a sudden that talent that, you know, my spreadsheets and everything kind of tells me that they have, has now come to the forefront. An inappropriate time for me, but I guess because they also beat City, it kind of evens that thing out. You know, they just beat both of us. So, you know, it is what it is. Although we didn't capitalize, they did. But they've just been on tremendous form. Now, this one, they're going to play Fulham, right, at Old Trafford. This is the game where, you know, the onus is on them to go ahead and win the game, to see what they're like with Michael Carrick against a team that they're expected to win, a team they're expected to have most of the ball, they're expected to be the protagonist in, and that is the next kind of phase to seeing what Carrick is capable of doing as a manager of Man United. Because I do think, you know, me, myself included, a lot of people now. My friend David, who's been on this show and, you know, will tell you, like, hey, you know, I want to get the best in class in the summer. So for me, regardless of what Carrick does, it doesn't matter. But I do think that there are those. I think this is a chance for Carrick to prove that he's a top-class manager. Like, Mikel Arteta was also an ex-player, you know, who had been there as a player and knows the club well and knows what the club means to be part of the club. And look what he's gotten us. I think sometimes people are just always a little bit too, oh, who's on the market? I don't want to miss out who's on the market. They need to look at it and like, do we want to let Kerr cut the building? But again, I think they need to assess that at the end of the season. As the tests go on, it's going to be very interesting. Chelsea, on the other hand, as well, I think under the radar, since they have had Liam Rosinia take over, have had a turn of form, with the exception of losing to Arsenal, which isn't, and by the way, that second leg is coming up in the week coming up, which I hope we will have a live stream on Fire Them Cannons for. I believe we do. We've been discussing this. To fill out what it was from the first one. But yeah, he's been very good. Again, Crystal Palace, self-destructing, got sent down 10 men. I hear all that. So then they went to play Napoli on the weekend. You get again a really, really tough team to play against, and they got the job done to qualify in the top 8. So they're starting to turn it around a little bit. I think West Ham, with all the players that have been leaving this last week, especially from that midfield has gone from like middle of the pack talent to like the worst midfield in the Premier League. Chelsea is one of the best midfields of the Premier League, should go on at home and really take it to them like they did the first time they met. And again, for Villa, close the gap to 4 points. They have a tough game. Again, by the way, credit to Villa. Did go to St. James's Park and win, something that Man City did not do. All right, so I do need to acknowledge that. They got the Brentford, who I think is going to be desperate for something, having dropped the last 2 games to defeats. So this is going to be an interesting one. But I think overall, Unai Emery said it himself, that he only sees them as kind of like a top 5 team, and that's hence kind of what I have them. 3 to 5 is where I kind of think Villa will be based on their form versus, the talent versus what's going on. By the way, Douglas Luiz back. Anyway, to carry on for what I'm saying, is 3 to 5 is where I think, based off of, all the information I have and the projections moving forward. Let's talk title race. And Arsenal have been keeping Man City in the race. It kills me to say this. This is going to be an interesting conversation as we take this video to a close. Man City had come off of 4 straight games without victory. 3 draws in a row. It started with Sunderland. Then it went on with, who was the next one? Chelsea. Then with Brighton. And then, bang, lose to Man United in the derby. Now, again, that also was followed up with a Bodo Glimt result in the Champions League, which, has basically been forgiven because they did qualify as number 8 in the top 8. But they got the perfect punching bag at home last week against Wolves. But let's see, because Tottenham Hotspur, as much as they've been struggling this year, ain't Wolves. But that form should have knocked them out of the title race if Arsenal took care of business. But I gotta say, guys, a team still at the top of the tier. We'll get back to City in a little bit because I want to bring in the discussion as a whole. The Arsenal, my club, have been falling under the pressure of expectation recently. I have to be honest. There's a nice rallying cry in the midweek from Arteta. There's a nice little bit of spark and inspiration having seen Havertz back and play with Gyökeres and how that combined as a combination in attack. But Arsenal need to kind of just play with freedom, play with fun, because Arsenal are now getting to that point now with what I feel like this Ellen Road game has become now to date the most must-win game of the season for Arsenal. It is vital that Arsenal pick up 3 points, because if not, and if City then the next day actually take care of business against Spurs. Now, what would be the situation if Arsenal lose to Leeds? Let's not put that into the universe. And City win. It would be cut to 3 points, which means that with the goal difference advantage and the goal scored advantage, even a draw would mean that City would be in control of their own destiny. And Arsenal cannot allow that scenario to happen by any means necessary. So, it was a very disappointing result against Man United. The goals in the Premier League have been hard to come by. Even the 2 goals that we scored against United was own goal and then a shot by Moreno from a corner that barely crossed the line, like barely. They needed the referee to kind of be like, to award the goal. And even at that point, what hurt me the most is that Arsenal, after having wrestled the point back, which by the way would have us 5 points clear instead of 4, which I think for me is a big difference. It would be back to where it kind of was after the Sunderland game and Villa weekend, which, but instead we're lower than that at 4, which means that all this time that City have dropped points, Arsenal have only opened the gap by 2 points now. It was 5, it's now 2 in terms of from that point of view, and it's not good. City were ready to give up on this title race. You could see it. Arsenal breathed life into Manchester City. That derby loss, despite if they didn't beat Liverpool, had they just taken care of business against Forest, I felt like that would have killed City's hopes. But not only did they not beat Forest, when City closed the gap to 4, Arsenal lost to United themselves at home. The first defeat at the Emirates all season, and it's not good enough. To lose the focus and the concentration and to allow United into the right spots. Again, I've already given United for their praise for what they did. I expect better, especially defensively. The first time I've seen Arsenal concede 3 goals, I think, for ages in any competition. And it was just so un-Arsenal. I expect and I pray that Arsenal turn it around because, yes, they are still in the driver's seat. All the metrics, all the stats, everything still points to the fact that Arsenal should win the league. City's form this season has not been ferocious. That's why I've used the term kept in the race. I think again, they won in the Champions League. They beat Wolves, but have they really turned a corner? Have they really started to show you that, they're scary? This is a big weekend for them against Tottenham, regardless of what happens to Arsenal in terms of a Man City point of view. But this title race now, unfortunately, is very fascinating, and it's at a very important, fragile state from an Arsenal point of view right now, and from a Man City point of view. I think emotionally and mentally for both these teams. 15 games to go. This is the first of the last 15. I would call this 5-game stretch really key, because at the end of this 5-game stretch comes the run-in, the last 10 games. How do both of these teams set up? What is the points gap heading into the run-in? And it starts now. For Arsenal, let's take a look at the fixtures before we head off. Let's take a look at the fixtures for the Gunners. Let's move them up. Let's take a look here. I won't bring them up on the screen, but I will tell you. The next 5, of course, Leeds tonight or tomorrow. Then they got Sunderland at home, Brentford away, which is tough, Spurs away, so back-to-back away games in that stretch. And then that it's finished up with Chelsea at home. So these next 3 games in particular for me, heading into Tottenham and Chelsea back-to-back, Leeds, Sunderland, and yes, even Brentford now because of that loss. But Brentford and Leeds are both 2 tough away fixtures, right? But at this point, it doesn't matter. Nottingham Forest just went to Brentford and won. Arsenal need to put pedal to the metal. They need to play with freedom. They need to play with expression and prioritize the offensive side of the ball. I hate to say it, but we gotta have that. But that being said, I'm gonna sound like I'm talking out of 2 sides of my mouth. The defense recently, even though we're fully fit, is a tremendous concern. The way that they've been playing it defensively. I guess it's the backups, but even to concede 2 to Kairat. Anyway, guys, fascinating. And as I said, guys, I'll be putting my efforts into Fire Them Cannons, so hit that QR code. Make sure you're subscribing there. Make sure you're subscribing here. Yeah, so the next episode of Anton's Tiers will be on Fire Them Cannons. I will be collaborating onto my own stream, so you will still be able, for my Hotsport subscribers, to see this video here on Hotsport. But for the most part, it is going to be a program under the umbrella of Fire Them Cannons. Same with my other Premier League shows. I'm going to be trying to kind of kick back into gear on some of the other sports here on this channel. And so kind of the Premier League aspects of Hotsport will be going away. And I know for the main viewers who like this show, that's kind of the way it is. But again, let's see. We're going to try to make new shows. Just keep it locked in terms of seeing what's upcoming here on this network. Because again, this network is my baby, my brainchild, but so is Fire Them Cannons. And Fire Them Cannons has it's just got all the legs. It's got all the exposure. It's got all the great guests. It's got all, you know, the numbers, the attention, and, you know, I have to put my efforts, Cal is doing it too, into that channel. So go check all that out. Then I will see you guys on Fire Them Cannons then the next time. Until then, guys, Anton out.